Welcome everyone to the opening ceremony for the 2021 Virtual Regeneron International Science and Engineering Fair. I'm Barb Baker, and I am delighted and honored to be your host for this week. We are gathered here to celebrate the world's best and brightest young scientists and engineers, and to provide a global stage for sharing their extraordinary STEM research projects. The International Science and Engineering Fair, or ISEF, is a program of the Society for Science. ISEF is the world's largest science competition for high school students. Through a global network of affiliated local, regional, and national science fairs, only a select group of top-performing students qualify for Regeneron ISEF, from millions who have demonstrated their knowledge of science and engineering at their local fairs. For you, our Regeneron ISEF finalists, much of the hard work is already completed. You've submitted your projects and been through the rigorous virtual judging process. So now, this week is all about opportunities. The opportunity to connect and engage with your peers, to explore our college fair and STEM career halls, the opportunity to meet and interact with your category sponsors, to present your work to the public, and the opportunity to hear from notable alumni, prominent scientists, entrepreneurs, and STEM leaders. While we're not all together this year, we want to see each of you participating at home. Share photos and your experiences online using #RegeneronISEF. You can follow the Society for Science on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and Snapchat. This week, there are so many fantastic events and experiences to be a part of. In fact, the legendary Pin Exchange, sponsored by the National Geographic Society, for finalists only, is happening in Event Farm right after this program concludes. You don't want to miss it. Return here to the auditorium to join panels, symposia, and awards programs. You can also participate in the STEM Experiential Hall and visit other projects in the exhibit hall right here in Project Board. Tomorrow, Monday, is your last chance to visit the live college fair and live STEM career hall. Interact in real time with special award organizations, sponsors, and nearly 90 colleges and universities. Make a note, we don't want you to miss out. Public Day is Tuesday. Use #RegeneronISEF and get the word out to friends and family. Finalists, please be at your project for at least 2 hours as your schedule allows. On Wednesday, finalists should return to Event Farm for the category sponsor receptions. There, you'll get to meet other finalists in your category, as well as sponsors and distinguished guests. Wow, that's a lot of information. But don't worry if you didn't get it all. You can always check the daily schedule in the lobby for the most up-to-date information. We are grateful to the entire community of ISEF sponsors who are all working together to support ISEF and make everything I've just described happen. The Society is thrilled to see such varied companies, organizations, and foundations coming together to support STEM education and inspire the next generation of scientists and engineers. Now, I'd like to introduce the President and CEO of Society for Science and publisher of Science News, Maya Ajmera. Prior to leading the Society, Maya founded and led the Global Fund for Children, an organization serving the world's most vulnerable young people. She is also an award-winning children's book author, has held several academic appointments, and is an alumna of the 1985 Science Talent Cert. Ladies and gentlemen, Maya Ajmera.
Thank you, Barb, and welcome everyone to the 2021 Regeneron International Science and Engineering Fair. I am honored to represent the Society for Science, an organization known for our award-winning journalism and our world-class science competitions. 100 years ago, publishing magnate E.W. Scripps and zoologist William Ritter launched our organization, then called Science Service, to provide accurate, fact-based science news. Today, the Society for Science publishes Science News and Science News for Students, reaching millions of readers. Then in 1942, the Society launched our first science research competition, the Science Talent Search, now sponsored by Regeneron for high school seniors in the United States. We also produced the Broadcom Masters, the premier middle school STEM competition, which launched a decade ago. Around 70 years ago, in 1950, we launched the International Science and Engineering Fair, then called the National Science Fair. I do not think our founders and early leaders could have ever envisioned where we are today. Our first National Science Fair had only 30 projects. Think about that, 30 projects! Today, millions of students compete from around the world for the opportunity to participate in ISEF. And out of those millions, nearly 2,000 students are competing here this week. Amazing! I'm also so pleased and proud to share that this is our biggest ISEF ever. With 1,471 projects, we have more projects being judged than ever before. It isn't surprising that we have so many people involved in Science Fair in 2020 and 2021. This has been a tremendous year for science. We have witnessed firsthand the amazing impact that science has on our everyday lives. What's more, we have seen scientists work collaboratively at breakneck speed to learn more about this terrible virus and discover new treatments and vaccines. In a year that has been bleak, science has given us hope. The pandemic has changed all our lives, and thankfully for many of us, the day-to-day fears caused by COVID-19 are subsiding. But that is not the case in countries like India and Brazil. If you are living in a community or country experiencing a dramatic increase of cases, I want to take a moment to say our prayers are with you and your families. Even with the enormous hardships that we have endured globally, I am so inspired by the breakthroughs we have seen this year related to COVID-19, but I'm even more reassured by what I'm seeing from our student scientists and engineers. Every single student competing this week wants to make our world a better place. You looked around your communities, whether you live in Cairo or Bangkok, New York City, or Phoenix, Arizona, you saw a problem and wanted to find a solution. It is all of you who give me hope, who make me optimistic for the future. You have proven that if a worldwide pandemic can't stop you from innovating and engaging in scientific research, nothing can. Our world is in chaos. Schooling was interrupted, yet you all persevered. Grit and determination coupled with creativity have been crucial this past year. I have good reason to be hopeful. Look at some of the footsteps you're following in. Mary Sue Coleman, who's a national leader in higher education, competed at ISEF in 1959 and 1960. She's the past president of the University of Michigan and the University of Iowa. Paul Modric, who's the recipient of the 2015 Nobel Prize in Chemistry, competed at ISEF in 1964. His research clarified the nature and functions of DNA mismatch repair, which plays an important role in the control of mutation production. Roderick Pettigrew, who you will hear from on the Excellence in Science and Technology panel, served as the founding director for the National Institute of Biomedical Imaging and Bioengineering at the National Institutes of Health. He's a pioneer and world expert in cardiovascular magnetic resonance imaging. He competed at ISEF in 1967. Brian Greene, professor of physics and mathematics, who is renowned for his groundbreaking discoveries in superstring theory, competed in ISEF in 1980. Heidi Williams, who you will hear from later this week as part of the Women in STEM panel, competed in ISEF in 1999. Heidi, who won the 2015 MacArthur Award, is known for her work examining the effects of patent policies and technology on medical research and healthcare. And then there's Eden Fulgo, who you will meet later this week on the Innovation and Entrepreneurship panel, competed in ISEF in 2007 and 2008. She founded and scaled SunSaluter, a global nonprofit that has deployed an open source solar panel tracker design in 19 countries. Today, she is the founder and CEO of Mobot. And lastly, you are following in the shoes of Pelagia Majoni, who competed just a few years ago in 2017. Pelagia is an undergraduate student at Haverford College who will be speaking on the Social Innovation panel on Tuesday. She won the Student of Vision Abbey Award at the celebrated Grace Hopper Conference for her vision in creating a future where the people who imagine and build technology mirror the people and societies for which they build. The science fair community has always been a breeding ground for trailblazers and problem solvers, people looking beyond the boundaries of what everyone thinks is possible. All of our sponsors are also trailblazers. I'm so grateful that they shared in our vision of hosting a virtual ISEF competition and made a big bet on us. Thank you. Thank you to our title sponsor, Regeneron, to George Yankopoulos, Regeneron's President and Chief Scientific Officer, Len Schleifer, Regeneron's Founder, President and Chief Executive Officer. I'd also like to thank Hala Mirza, Regeneron's Senior Vice President for Corporate Communications and Citizenship, as well as her team. And thank you to all our major sponsors, including the Broadcom Foundation, Johnson & Johnson, and the National Geographic Society. And I'd also like to thank our additional sponsors, the Akamai Foundation, Jacobs, the King Abdul Aziz and his Companions Foundation for Giftedness and Creativity, Microsoft Azure Sphere, Richard F. Karras Foundation, RISE, Siegel Family Endowment, West Pharmaceutical Services, Sesco Linguistic Services, Gordon and Betty Moore Foundation, Inseco, and Zeiss. Before I close, I'd like to call on all our finalists and every young scientist in engineering joining us today. Meet the challenges before you. You can and will change the world for the better. You give us all so much hope. Thank you so much for listening to me, and enjoy yourself this week.
Thank you, Maya and Society for Science, for everything you do in support of these incredible finalists. And now, we'd like to share with you just how global our Regeneron ISEF community truly is. Let's take a brief look at all the participating countries, regions, and territories with some of this year's virtual Regeneron ISEF finalists who represent our global community. It's amazing to see the global community of young scientists and innovators. We are so pleased to be joined by all of you. You are all now a member of the ISEF family. And earlier, you heard Maya mention several alumni from the Society's programs. I'd like to introduce you to one such notable Society alumnus who was among the top winners of the 1976 Science Talent Search. Dr. George Yancopoulos is Regeneron's president and chief scientific officer. A member of the National Academy of Sciences, Dr. Yancopoulos, along with key members of his team, is the principal inventor of Regeneron's 9 FDA-approved drugs and foundational technologies. He has been pivotal in creating the science-driven culture at Regeneron, earning the company widespread recognition, including repeatedly being named one of the most innovative companies in the world. We are honored to have him with us today. Welcome, George.
It is my honor to welcome you to the Regeneron ISEF. This is a momentous occasion, the beginning of a big week for the future of science. This is where we find the science heroes of the future who will lead humanity's fight against so many global threats, from pandemics to climate change, right here at Regeneron ISEF, where we are united by the common goal of engaging, inspiring, and celebrating the talented young scientists who will use their scientific superpowers to improve the world. Like all of you, my scientific journey also began by doing science research in high school, ultimately becoming one of the winners of what was then called the Westinghouse Science Talent Search. It remains one of my proudest achievements, and it changed my life, inspired me to devote the rest of my life to using the power of science to try to cure disease. And I think that is what we have been doing at Regeneron, by inventing and developing some of the world's most important medicines, such as the world's leading medicine to fight blindness, the world's leading medicine to simultaneously fight multiple allergic diseases such as asthma and eczema, the world's first genetic-based medicine to fight heart disease, multiple innovative approaches against cancer, as well as our recent treatments for Ebola and COVID-19. And it all started with my high school science project, which was called The Molecular Basis of Regeneration in Blepharisma. And it's not entirely coincidental that the company that my long-term partner, Len Schleifer, and I started back over 30 years ago is called Regeneron. And because of how much I owe to my early experiences doing high school science research, it has become my personal mission to ensure more young people are inspired to pursue STEM careers so as to help improve the world. And that's why Regeneron has taken on the sponsorship of the Science Talent Search that I competed in back in high school, as well as of ISEF. Think how amazing it is to me that these hallowed competitions that I competed in, which are the oldest and most prestigious high school science competitions in the world, are now named after the company that I helped found and build. I can only hope that many of you go on to have similar experiences. In a year where science has impacted nearly every facet of our lives and is providing the solution to surviving this devastating pandemic, the call for scientific talent has never been more compelling. When great minds come together to use their considerable scientific talents to tackle the existential threats, we all stand to benefit. Even before the events of the last 18 months, I've always believed that science is the key to unlocking the challenges facing humanity, and the crucial role of science in combating COVID-19 reinforces this belief. It's a belief we put into action every day at Regeneron, and I think we provide a great example for the world. Today, Regeneron is the only large-cap public company in America that was founded by and still run by physician scientists. At Regeneron, we follow the science and use our homegrown technologies to discover and develop life-transforming medicines. With 10 FDA-approved or authorized medicines under our belt, we know we're only just getting started. And this year was a great example of the power of our technologies and of our approaches, as we delivered the first FDA-authorized antibody cocktail treatment for those already infected and suffering from COVID-19, which can also be used to prevent COVID-19 in the millions of Americans who are immunosuppressed and thus cannot respond to or be protected by vaccines, but who could be protected by our RegenCov antibody cocktail. Our antibody cocktail has received emergency authorization in the United States and in several other countries, including most recently in India, where we hope it can help in the response to their devastating COVID-19 surge. It's our unwavering commitment to fighting disease that motivates us at Regeneron. It's that same unwavering commitment that I see in all of the Regeneron ISEF finalists, who in the face of adversity overcame the incredible challenges of the last year to pursue their research. I'm actually not surprised that this is the biggest ISEF to date, with the most research projects ever. And yet I know we have much more work to do to continue to create equitable pathways to science research and STEM careers. It is my personal mission to ensure more young people are inspired and prepared to pursue and succeed in STEM careers, and more importantly, to help improve the world. That's why at Regeneron, more than 90% of our corporate philanthropic investments support STEM initiatives. In 2020, through our STEM partnerships and programs, we helped impact more than 500,000 students. And we set an even more ambitious goal to now extend this commitment to over 2.5 million students, as well as to also supporting their teachers through professional development, training, and fellowships. And that reminds me to give a big thank you to all the dedicated teachers, educators, mentors, fair directors, parents, and volunteers that make ISEF a reality for thousands of students. Thank you for all you do. You all have a role in shaping the future of innovation and in nurturing the next generation of science heroes. If Regeneron ISEF gives us a window into what the future holds, then I am hopeful. All the ISEF finalists here are poised to be the scientific heroes of the future. You have the potential to find solutions to the existential threats we face today and to the ones of tomorrow. Whether it's pandemics, climate change, water or food security, we're putting our future in your capable hands. Congratulations again to all the Regeneron ISEF finalists, and I can only hope you're all just getting started in a lifetime of adventure and success in science.
Thank you, George, and again, tremendous thanks to title sponsor Regeneron for their commitment to science education and fostering the next generation of scientific talent. We've mentioned alumni from the Society's network of programs, and this year's Regeneron ISEF Keynote is another member of that special group. Dr. Michio Kaku is one of the most widely known figures in science in the world today. He is an internationally recognized authority in two areas. The first is Einstein's unified field theory, which Dr. Kaku is attempting to complete. The other is to predict trends affecting business, medicine, finance, and our way of life based on the latest research in science. He is the author of many best-selling books, appears regularly on BBC TV, the Discovery Channel, the Science Channel, and hosts his own weekly radio program called Science Fantastic. Dr. Kaku is currently a professor of theoretical physics at the City College of New York and CUNY Graduate Center. He graduated summa cum laude and first in his physics class from Harvard University and received his PhD in physics from UC Berkeley. And yes, he is also an alumnus of the Society's 1963 National Science Fair, known to us today as the Regeneron International Science and Engineering Fair. It's my pleasure to welcome back to ISEF Dr. Michio Kaku.
If you want to understand the future, you have to understand physics.
Professor Michio Kaku is a professor of physics at the City University of New York and author of a number of best-selling books. He is an expert communicator on the science of the future.
In the coming years, we'll be put on our contact lenses and blink, we will go online.
I think that in this century, we will have an intercept of a conversation, eavesdropping on aliens in outer space.
The dinosaurs did not have a space program. We do, capable of going to the moon, Mars, and perhaps even beyond.
In 30 years, the ability of computers might possibly match that of the human brain. The big question is, how will the universe end? The laws of physics say we're doomed.
You discussed time travel. Is it possible?
It could very well be possible, and that's where string theory comes in. It says that there is a multiverse of universes. if there are other universes, can we go between universes? The thing about physics that really intrigues me is to find the most fundamental basis for everything, why it works, what makes it tick. And that's what I do for a living. Thank you very much.
Well, after such a great introduction, I can't wait to hear the speaker myself. Now, I'm a professor of theoretical physics. I work on Einstein's unified field theory, but I also work for the Science Channel, the Discovery Channel, and British television, and I get to interview the greatest minds on the planet. And every time I interview them, I ask the key question, the question of all questions. I ask them, is there intelligent life on the Earth? Well, I was watching TV and the Kardashians last night, and sometimes I wonder whether there's intelligent life on this planet. But I have no doubt there's intelligent life right here at this science fair. Because at this science fair, we're talking about some of the finest, most industrious, most innovative and imaginative people of your generation right here at this science fair. Now also, I sometimes get asked the question, how did I become a theoretical physicist? Well, let me tell you a story. You see, my parents came from Japan, even though they were originally born in California. During World War II, they were locked up in California in a relocation camp, 100,000 of them. They were denied any basic rights. Money was confiscated. And when they were released after World War II, they were penniless. So my dream of going to college and becoming a scientist was very dim. In fact, I thought impossible. But then, when I was 8 years old, something magical happened, something which completely changed my life. You see, when I was 8 years old, a great scientist had just died. And in all the papers, they published a picture of his desk. That's all. A picture of his desk with a book on it. The book was open and unfinished. And the caption said, "The greatest scientist of our time could not finish this book." Well, I was flabbergasted. I said, what? How come a great scientist couldn't finish that book? I mean, it's a homework assignment, right? Why didn't he ask his mother? Why didn't he look it up in the library? I thought. I had to know what was in that book. What's so hard that a great man couldn't finish it? Well, I went to the library and I found out that this man's name was Albert Einstein. And that book was to be the unified field theory, the theory of everything, perhaps an equation no more than 1 inch long that would allow us to read the mind of God. It was to be the God equation, the theory of all theories. Well, I was floored. I had to know what was in that book. Why couldn't he finish that book? Well, now I'm a theoretical physicist. I can read that book now, and the tale of the search for the theory of everything I wrote up in a book. It's called The God Equation, The Quest for a Theory of Everything, which I'm quite surprised hit the New York Times bestseller list, the Amazon bestseller list, because people want to know, is there a rhyme or reason to the universe? Is it all chaotic? Or is there a blueprint, a paradigm, a principle that governs the universe? Well, that's the God equation. So when I was in high school, I decided that I wanted to be part of this great revolution. So I went to my mom one day and I said, "Mom, can I have permission to build an atom smasher in the garage? A particle accelerator, a 2.3 million electron volt betatron electron accelerator in the garage." Well, my mom stared at me and said, "Sure, why not? And don't forget to take out the garbage." Well, I took out the garbage and I got 400 pounds of transformer steel, 22 miles of copper wire. And how do you wind 22 miles of copper wire? Well, I suspended this huge spool of wire on the goalpost of the high school football field. I gave it to my mother, who then ran to the 50-yard line with this wire. He gave it to my father at the 50-yard line, and he went to the end of the goalpost. So between my mother and my father, over Christmas, we wound 22 miles of copper wire. Well, finally, it was ready. It consumed 6 kilowatts of raw power. When I plugged it in for the first time, I closed my eyes, I shut my ears, and I heard this huge crackling sound as 6 kilowatts of power went surging through my atom smasher. And then I heard this pop, pop sound as I blew out all the circuits in the house. Well, my poor mom, she'd come home from a hard day's work and the lights would flicker and she'd say, "Okay, where are the fuses?" And she must have thought to herself, why couldn't I have a son who plays baseball? Why can't he play basketball? And for God's sake, why can't he find a nice Japanese girlfriend? Why does he build these machines in the garage? Well, I wanted to enter the science fair. So I went to San Francisco and I entered my project. My project was to create antimatter in a cloud chamber and then to be able to produce artificially my own antimatter. Well, I won grand prize in San Francisco, and off I went to the National Science Fair in Albuquerque, New Mexico. It was a dream of a lifetime. There, I met atomic scientists. I met the scientists who actually built the atomic bomb during World War II. And they arranged for me to get a scholarship to Harvard if I could get accepted. Well, this was a dream of a lifetime. I thought I would never even go to college and yet get a 4-year scholarship to Harvard. And then when I graduated from Harvard, they offered me a job. Well, not quite the job that I wanted. They offered me a job working at Los Alamos National Laboratory, designing the next generation of hydrogen bombs. Well, I gracefully declined this very generous offer for a job. And I told them that, you see, I want to work on an even bigger explosion. I want to work on something more powerful than a hydrogen bomb. And that is the Big Bang, the creation of the universe. You see, if you have the God equation, the equation of all equations, the final theory, it'll explain to you what set off the Big Bang. Why did it bang? What set it off? What was the fuse? The fuse that set into motion the universe itself. And I said to myself, that's for me. Well, later I began to research the history of the theory of everything. And I began to realize that it has a long history, going back to the ancient Greeks and even before. Every time you look at the heavens at night and see the splendor of the night sky, you wonder, where did it all come from? What does it all mean? Is there a unifying theme to this chaotic, random universe of ours? The Greeks asked themselves the question 2,000 years ago. Democritus thought it was atoms that made up the universe. A means cannot, tum means cut, so atom means cannot be cut. But Pythagoras, of the Pythagorean theorem, he said, no. It's not atoms, it's music. Music is the paradigm rich enough to explain the diversity of everything we surround us. You see, he saw a lyre string, a musical instrument that looks like a harp, and he plucked it, and he noticed that the longer the string, the lower the note. He went by a blacksmith shop, and he realized the longer the sword they were making, you hit it, the lower the sound. And he said, aha, that's it. The mathematics of vibrations and resonances, that is the basis of music. And then he made the fateful statement that only music is rich enough to explain the vast diversity of everything you see around us. Only music has that richness. It's not random. It's not chaotic. It's not a mess. It's music. Well, unfortunately, the Roman Empire fell apart. And as a consequence, for 1,000 years, there was darkness, witchcraft, sorcery. For 1,000 years, all these philosophical discussions were forgotten. But then, around 1666, there was a huge plague that hit London. 1/4 of the population of London died in the Great Plague. Cambridge University was shut down, locked down. A young 23-year-old student had to go home. And walking down his estate, he noticed an apple fall. And then he asked himself the question for the ages. If an apple falls, does the moon also fall? And he realized that yes, the moon is in free fall. The heavens obey the same laws as the earth. He created a unified theory of heaven and earth. And he could calculate with it. But the mathematics at that point were pretty primitive. So what did he do? He created calculus. That young man was Isaac Newton. He discovered not just the law of gravity, but the laws of mechanics. And that is set into motion the understanding of why machines can work. All of a sudden, centuries later, we had locomotives crisscrossing Europe. We had factories. We had mass production. All of a sudden, the wealth of society quadrupled because of the creation of machines. We entered the Industrial Revolution. So the work of a physicist helped to unleash the first great revolution in history, the Industrial Revolution. And then there was a man who was very poor, practically homeless, by the name of Michael Faraday in the 1800s. And he worked at the Royal Institution, washing bottles, sweeping the floor. He had no formal education, but he was very curious. And he started to do experiments on magnetism and electricity in his spare time. And he made some of the biggest discoveries of the 1800s. He realized that a changing electric field creates a magnetic field. A changing magnetic field creates an electric field. And then that allowed him to create motors, dynamos, generators. And with the work of James Clerk Maxwell, he showed that if electricity and magnetism change into each other fast enough, it becomes the electromagnetic wave. In other words, light. And that set into motion the electric revolution of the 1800s. So again, when somebody who's curious and has a passion, that's what propels them to make great breakthroughs. And then in 1905, there was a young man who couldn't get a job. He was considered a failure in life. He got a job as a patent clerk in Switzerland. But he remembered as a child, when he was 16 years old, asking himself a simple question: can you outrace a light beam? It took him 10 years to figure it out. The answer is no, you cannot outrace a light beam. The light beam always moves at the speed of light, a constant. That man was Albert Einstein. And E equals mc squared allowed him to unify matter, M, with E, energy. M, the matter of a star, and E, the energy of sunlight. He explained why the stars shine. He explained why the universe is lit up at night. And then after World War II, we wanted to then understand the nature of matter itself. We began to smash protons apart. In fact, instead of nature becoming simpler, it became more complicated. All of a sudden, we had hundreds of subatomic particles pouring out of our atom smashers after World War II. J. Robert Oppenheimer, the father of the atomic bomb, was so frustrated that he said, quote, "The Nobel Prize should be given to the physicist who does not discover a new particle this year." Well, today we have something called the Standard Model of Particles. It's ugly. It's clumsy, but hey, it works. In the low energy realm, below 14 trillion electron volts, it does describe the world of subatomic particles like mesons and quarks and neutrinos, but it is ugly as sin. It has 36 quarks and antiquarks, 20 free parameters that you can play with any way you want, 3 identical generations, redundant generations of particles. There must be a higher theory. Well, recently there has been a proposal, still controversial and not proven, but it is called string theory. And that's what I do for a living. In fact, I'm the creator of string field theory, the co-founder of that equation, along with my colleague Keiji Kikawa. It's an equation this long that unifies all the equations of string theory. So what does string theory do? Well, if you had a super microscope, you could see that an electron is not really a dot at all. An electron is a rubber band. It vibrates just the way Pythagoras envisioned. You change frequency, and you have to give it a new name. You call it a neutrino. You wiggle it again, it turns into a quark. In fact, if you wiggle it enough times, it becomes the hundreds of subatomic particles that we have spent billions of dollars cataloging by smashing apart the protons. So, what is subatomic particle physics? It's nothing but musical notes on a tiny vibrating string. What is physics? Physics is the harmonies you can make on these vibrating strings. What is chemistry? Chemistry is the melodies you can play when these strings bump into each other. What is the universe? The universe is a symphony of strings. And then what is the mind of God that Albert Einstein spent 30 years of his life chasing after? The mind of God is cosmic music resonating through hyperspace. And now let me say something about something I've noticed. I travel around the world giving talks at conferences, and I can't help but notice that some countries are rich beyond imagination, and other countries are poor. And I ask myself, why is that? I see that rich countries, well, they have great universities. They have scientists. These are the people who create wealth. These are the people who set into motion the Industrial Revolution after Isaac Newton, the Electric Revolution after Faraday and Maxwell, the Nuclear Revolution after the work of Einstein. You see, these societies have a free discussion of ideas, an interaction of ideas. They don't have a king or a queen or a dictator telling them what to do. No, science creates wealth. So in all these years of traveling, I've learned two things. First of all, what was it that made Newton and Faraday and Maxwell and Einstein so great? Two things: curiosity and passion. They had a curiosity to understand the universe, and they had a passion and the willpower to push it through. And second, I learned, where does wealth come from? Wealth does not come from taxes, because that's simply shifting money around. It doesn't come from printing money, because then you have to pay off the debt eventually. It comes from science and technology. That's where it all comes from. And you know, to be a scientist is great. I saw a pamphlet when I was in elementary school. The pamphlet had a title, "So you want to become a physicist?" ? And the question was, what does a baseball player and a physicist have in common? Well, the answer was, a physicist and a baseball player, they get paid to do what they love. But you see, physicists have an advantage in the sense that athletes, well, after they're 40 years of age, it's difficult to play pro sports after you're 40 years of age. And your body gets older, and there are very few people at that level. Science is open to everybody. People with curiosity, people with a passion. And now let me end on this story. My favorite Einstein story is this. When Einstein was an old man, he was tired of giving the same talk over and over again. So one day his chauffeur came up to him, and the chauffeur said, "Professor, I'm really a part-time actor. I've heard your speech so many times, I've memorized it. So why don't we switch places? I will put on a mustache, I will put on a wig, I will be the great Einstein, and you can put on my jacket and be my chauffeur and take a rest." Well, Einstein loved the joke, so they switched places. This went along famously until one day, a mathematician in the back asked a very difficult question. And Einstein thought, oh, the game is up. But then the chauffeur said, "That question is so elementary that even my chauffeur over here can answer it for you." And Let me say one last thing. If any of you ever discovered the God equation, the theory of all theories, the master theory, if you ever discover the God equation, let me give you a word of advice. First, tell me first. We'll publish together, and we'll win the Nobel Prize together. Anyway, good luck, and remember, you are part of the vanguard. You are the creators of wealth. You are the people who change all of society and human history. Good luck.
On behalf of everyone here today, thank you, Dr. Kaku, for taking the time to speak with us. Before we wrap up our opening ceremony, I'd like to share something special from some of our ISEF finalists around the world. Take a look. That was awesome. I hope you all had as much fun making that as it was to watch. So much energy and joy, and some noteworthy dance moves too. Thank you to all of you who participated. So, before we say goodbye, I have just a few reminders about the schedule and all of the upcoming events. First, the Pin Exchange, sponsored by National Geographic, is up next on Event Farm. This event is exclusively for finalists, so to all the adults out there, you'll have to sit this one out. Tomorrow is your last chance to visit the live college fair and STEM Career Hall. Tuesday is Public Day. Don't forget to be at your project for at least 2 hours as your schedule permits. Category receptions with your peers and sponsors are on Wednesday. We'll see you here throughout the week for panel discussions, symposia, and other great sessions. Check the daily schedule in the lobby for the latest information. Thanks to our speakers, Maya Ejmera, George Yankopoulos, and Michio Kaku, with special thanks to Regeneron and our entire sponsor community for making this week and the whole Regeneron ISEF experience possible. We could not do it without you, and applaud your commitment to the next generation of great scientists and engineers. Finally, a big congratulations to each and every finalist. You are now a part of a special community of innovators and visionaries known as ISEF alumni. You are tomorrow's STEM leaders, and we are excited by the endless possibilities your future holds. Have a great week here at Regeneron ISEF, and I look forward to seeing you again on Thursday for the special award ceremony.